Hello all, my name is Richard Nugent. I'm an economist and the lead developer for the HEC FDA program at HEC. This series of videos serves as an introduction to flood risk assessment. In this video, we'll take a look at incorporating uncertainty into flood risk assessment. We'll discuss uncertainty about the input parameters, which ultimately feels a lot like quantifying uncertainty in our estimates of uncertainty. However, this approach allows us to view outputs and decision-making variables in terms of plausible ranges, in other words, distributions, rather than definitive estimates. A key topic in this class is how input uncertainties are calculated and accounted for. Recall the illustration of the Consumnes River period of record. The Consumnes River annual peak flows, as seen in the diagram on the left. If the record length is 50 years, in expectation we do not have a 100-year event. With the longer 104-year period of record, we have a better estimate of the 50-year event, but especially some of the smaller events. For example, the 1 in 10 events, and I should have a 100-year event as well, as illustrated by the orange bar. Clearly, a longer record helps us to estimate how large these rare events are, but how can we estimate how good or how bad this record of these events is? It turns out that the log Pearson type 3 distribution is the statistical distribution that best approximates the naturally occurring distribution of annual peak flows. We can fit the period of record to the log Pearson type 3 curve to generate synthetic or hypothetical records based on our observed data. If we do this over and over again, we can estimate the range of potential peak flows based on the statistical curve, the log Pearson type 3, that we have selected. For a given flow, we have uncertainty, although substantially less uncertainty about what stage the flow will produce. There are some of the factors that come into play include how much debris is in the flow, how big are the plants in the channel, how good or detailed is the cross-sectional data, that is the topographic data, how detailed are the surveys, so on and so forth. We will make some generalizations about stage uncertainty. We assume zero uncertainty at zero discharge. There is increasing uncertainty until the bank full stage. Uncertainty could be anything after that. Uncertainty may increase, decrease, or remain constant after the bank full stage. In economics, we have uncertainty about where structures are located, what is the ground elevation, how high is the first floor, what is the value of the structure, what is the value of the structure's contents, how well was the structure constructed, that is, will the structure hold up in a flood, will the structure be sandbagged, so on and so forth. Let's look at uncertainty in levee performance. We'll look at this in a little bit more detail because we deal with levees in a bit of a strange way. Without a levee, we have relative certainty about the floodplain water surface elevations at a given discharge. If we assume that the levee is perfect, this extends to the leveed conditions. In the diagram, the leveed conditions are represented by the darker dashed line, whereas the lighter gray dashed line represent the conditions without the levee. However, we know that levees occasionally fail. and often the consequences associated with breaches are worse than overtopping conditions because they may lead to higher flood depths, and it often takes people and their property by surprise. In FDA, we calculate the damages that would occur if the levee was breached, and we take those damages to be the damages in the without project conditions, that is the no levee condition. Then we multiply this levee failure damage by the probability that the failure does occur at each stage, which gives us a probability weighted stage damage estimate. This probability weighted stage damage estimate is what you see in the red line in the diagram. How does this all come together in expected annual damage? Well, for each iteration in a Monte Carlo simulation, a flow frequency curve is selected, a stage discharge or rating curve is selected, creating a stage frequency function, and a stage damage function is selected, creating a damage frequency function. The area under this curve, the damage frequency function, gives us a realization of expected annual damage. This results in many damage frequency curves, therefore many EAD estimates. As you can see by the dashed blue lines, you can have many different discharge frequency curves. You can have many different rating curves and stage damage curves, giving us many different damage frequency curves, and therefore many different realizations of expected annual damage. This simulation continues until the mean of expected annual damage stabilizes. But we can and should think of expected annual damage as a distribution of possibilities. As can be seen by this histogram of expected annual damages, we have a distribution of possible realizations of expected annual damage. And the mean expected annual damage in this case is given by the purple bar for this particular study, which is 521,000. If you have any questions about this video or any other videos, please feel free to email me, Richard Nugent, or post your question to the Discourse discussion board.